Debt. For most people, that word sparks fear, anxiety, and sleepless nights. Debt is often painted as the villain, the monster that devours dreams, the chain that keeps families trapped in cycles of poverty. We've all heard it before: stay out of debt. Debt is dangerous. Debt will ruin your life. And yes, debt can be destructive when it's misused. Millions have drowned in the deep waters of reckless spending, swiping credit cards for things they don't need, or borrowing money just to survive. But here's the untold truth. For centuries, the wealthy, the powerful, and the ambitious have used debt in a completely different way. They don't run from it. They embrace it. They turn it into a weapon, a financial lever that multiplies their wealth, accelerates their success, and builds dynasties that last for generations. While most people see debt as a trap, the wealthy see it as a tool. So today, in this documentary, we're diving deep into the 20 smart ways to use debt to grow your wealth. If you've ever felt chained by loans, if you've ever wondered how the rich seem to get richer while carrying more debt than the average person could ever imagine, then listen closely. Because what you're about to learn could completely change your relationship with money forever. Before we uncover these smart wealth-building strategies, we need to start with the foundation. The very DNA of how the wealthy think about debt. Not all debt is created equal. In fact, there are two main categories: bad debt and good debt. Bad debt is what keeps millions of people poor. It's borrowing money to buy liabilities, things that take money out of your pocket every month. Like financing a brand new car you can't afford, using payday loans to cover bills, or maxing out a credit card to go on vacation. Bad debt doesn't produce anything. It just bleeds you dry. But then there's good debt. The kind the wealthy love. This is borrowing money to buy assets, things that put money into your pocket. Assets that generate cash flow, appreciate over time, or help you scale income streams you couldn't otherwise reach. Good debt makes you richer. Bad debt makes you poorer. The difference? It all comes down to purpose and discipline. Once you see debt as a lever, a tool, a bridge to bigger opportunities, you'll never fear it the same way again. So let's dive into the first of our 20 smart ways to use debt to grow your wealth. Let's start with one of the most powerful and timeless ways to use debt: real estate. Real estate has created more millionaires than almost any other wealth-building vehicle in history. And the secret ingredient that makes it work for everyday investors: leverage. Think about it. If you had $100,000 sitting in the bank, you could buy one property worth $100,000. That's it. One door, one unit. But if you take that same $100,000 and use it as a down payment, leveraging debt from a bank, suddenly you can control multiple properties worth $500,000 or more. Instead of owning just one door, you might own 5 or 6. This is the magic of debt. The bank puts up most of the money, you control the asset, and if you choose wisely, your tenants pay down that loan every month while your property grows in value. Here's the key: real estate debt works best when it's tied to cash-flowing assets. Not just speculative flips, not just fancy properties in overpriced markets, but rental homes, apartment complexes, or commercial spaces that consistently generate income. The rich don't just buy real estate to live in luxury. They use debt to buy income-producing real estate that pays them month after month, while the mortgage slowly disappears. Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, said it best: the rich buy assets. The poor buy liabilities. And often, the rich buy those assets using debt. The second smart way to use debt to grow your wealth is through business expansion. Most small businesses fail not because the idea was bad, but because they lack the capital to grow. Imagine a baker who makes incredible bread but can only serve a few dozen customers a day because they have one tiny oven. Imagine a tech startup with brilliant software but no marketing budget to get it into the world. Debt can be the bridge between potential and reality. By using business loans, lines of credit, or even investor-backed financing, entrepreneurs can buy better equipment, hire more staff, expand into new locations, or launch powerful marketing campaigns. The wealthy understand that debt in business is not something to fear, it's fuel. When used wisely, every borrowed dollar has the potential to multiply into $5, $10, or even $100 in return. Of course, this comes with risk. A business without a proven model or steady revenue can crash under the weight of debt. But when a business is already profitable, debt becomes the gasoline poured onto the fire of growth. Think about Amazon. In its early days, Jeff Bezos constantly took on debt and reinvested every dollar into expansion. The company ran at losses for years, but that strategy built the global empire we see today. The third way is often overlooked, but it's one of the smartest: investing in yourself through education. Now, let's be clear. Not all education debt is good debt. Taking out massive loans for a degree with no real career prospects can trap people in financial quicksand. That's the tragedy of student loans in many parts of the world. But when debt is used to acquire high-income skills, the story changes. Skills like coding, sales, finance, law, engineering, or medicine. Skills that can multiply your earning power for decades. Imagine borrowing $20,000 to gain a skill that allows you to earn an extra $50,000 every single year. That's not debt, that's an investment with exponential returns. The wealthy know that the greatest asset is their mind. And sometimes, using debt strategically to sharpen that asset is the smartest move you can make. Not all assets are as large as real estate or businesses. Sometimes, small but consistent cash-flowing assets can be funded with debt. Take vending machines. A few $1,000s in financing can buy machines placed in the right locations, generating hundreds of dollars a month. Or laundromats, where financing the purchase of washers and dryers can lead to steady passive income. Even in the digital era, debt can help you acquire income-generating websites, online stores, or delivery vehicles for e-commerce logistics. The rule is simple: if the cash flow from the asset is greater than the debt payments, you've created a positive money machine. The poor use debt to buy things that rust, rot, or depreciate. The wealthy use debt to buy machines that spin off cash forever. Credit cards are often demonized, and for good reason. Used recklessly, they can destroy lives. But in the hands of the disciplined, they can become powerful tools. Wealthy individuals often use credit cards strategically for rewards, points, and cashback systems that essentially turn everyday spending into free money. They may finance short-term investments or business expenses with 0% April promotional cards, essentially borrowing money for free. The key difference: they always pay it off before interest hits. Imagine flying first class across the world using only points accumulated from business spending. Or earning thousands in cashback rewards every year. Or accessing capital interest-free for 12 months while reinvesting that money into a profitable venture. Credit card hacking is not for the undisciplined. But for those who master it, it's a way to make debt work for you, instead of against you. For millions of people, debt feels like a nightmare because it comes in many forms: credit cards, car loans, payday loans, store credit, student debt. Each one with its own interest rate, its own due date, and its own late fees. The stress isn't just in the money owed, it's in the confusion, the constant juggling act, the fear of missing one payment and spiraling into penalties. But here's something the wealthy understand: debt consolidation can transform chaos into control. Debt consolidation is when you take multiple high-interest debts and combine them into a single loan with a lower interest rate. Instead of juggling 5 or 6 payments, you now have just one, predictable, often smaller, and far less punishing. This doesn't just free your mind, it frees up cash flow. And cash flow is the lifeblood of wealth building. The difference between being crushed by debt and using it as a tool often starts here: simplify, lower interest, and regain control. It's like turning a raging storm into a steady breeze. One of the most overlooked smart uses of debt is its tax advantage. Most people don't realize this, but in many countries, the interest you pay on certain types of debt can actually reduce your taxable income. For example, mortgage interest, student loan interest, or even interest on some business loans can be deducted from your taxes. That means debt doesn't just allow you to control assets or grow businesses, it also lowers the amount of money you owe the government. The wealthy are masters of this. They strategically structure the debt so that every dollar they borrow and every dollar they repay works double duty, building wealth and lowering taxes. Even billionaires like Elon Musk or Warren Buffett have been known to borrow against their assets rather than selling them, because borrowed money isn't taxed as income. Imagine that, living a billionaire lifestyle funded by loans, while technically paying less in taxes than a middle-class worker. This is not about avoiding responsibility, it's about understanding the rules of the game. And the wealthy play that game masterfully. Now let's step into the world of investing. The stock market has created massive fortunes, but the real accelerant for many wealthy investors is leverage through margin loans. A margin loan allows you to borrow money from your broker, using your stock portfolio as collateral. This means you can control a larger position in the market without having to put up all the money yourself. For example, if you have $50,000 in stocks, a broker might allow you to borrow another $25,000 or more to buy additional stocks. If those stocks rise, your gains are multiplied. Of course, margin loans are risky. If your investments drop in value, you can be forced to sell at a loss. That's why the wealthy use margin carefully, not recklessly. But when used strategically, margin debt allows investors to scale their portfolios faster, seize opportunities during dips, and even diversify into multiple companies at once. The wealthy don't see debt as dangerous, they see it as a lever to pull when the right opportunity arises. Here's something few people talk about: using debt to build a personal brand. In today's economy, attention is one of the most valuable currencies. Those who can capture it and monetize it are rewriting the rules of wealth. Think about the creators, influencers, speakers, and entrepreneurs who built empires not because of factories or real estate, but because of their personal image and message. But building a brand takes investment, professional equipment, polished websites, marketing campaigns, even hiring PR teams. For many, this seems out of reach. Yet the wealthy often finance this stage through debt. They borrow not to consume, but to create visibility. Because once a brand is established, it becomes an income machine, attracting clients, customers, sponsorships, and endless opportunities. A single book launch, funded by a small loan, can lead to speaking engagements worth millions. A personal podcast studio, financed with debt, can turn into a media company. When the investment is in you and your ability to command attention, debt can be one of the smartest moves you ever make. The 10th smart way is one of the oldest tricks in the playbook of the ultra-wealthy, using debt for acquisitions. Large corporations have done this for decades. Instead of building something from scratch, they simply acquire it. And often, they don't even use their own cash, they use debt. This is called a leveraged buyout. A company borrows money, buys another company, and then uses the acquired company's profits to pay off the debt. It's bold, it's aggressive, and when it works, it's incredibly powerful. Even small business owners can use this strategy. Imagine borrowing to buy out a competitor or acquiring a struggling business with strong potential. With the right vision, that debt becomes the key to owning a bigger slice of the market. The wealthy don't always start from zero. They often buy into existing systems, using debt as the key to the door. Most people think debt is simply about borrowing money, but the wealthy know it can also be about protection. Here's the secret: when you owe money on an asset, it often becomes less attractive to potential lawsuits or predators. Imagine you own a property outright, worth $1 million. If someone sues you, that entire $1 million is exposed. But if the property is mortgaged with $800,000 in debt, suddenly there's much less for a legal attacker to take. In this way, debt acts like a shield. It discourages frivolous lawsuits and forces opportunists to look elsewhere. Wealthy individuals often structure their holdings with strategic debt, combined with legal protections like trusts or corporations. It's not about being reckless, it's about being untouchable. Debt doesn't just grow wealth. Sometimes, it protects the wealth you've already built. One of the most genius uses of debt, and one that billionaires use constantly, is borrowing against assets instead of selling them. Here's why: when you sell an asset, whether it's stock, real estate, or a business, you trigger a taxable event. You owe taxes on your gains. But when you borrow against that same asset, no taxes are triggered. You get access to cash without giving up ownership or paying capital gains. This is how Elon Musk funds his lifestyle. He borrows billions against his Tesla stock. Warren Buffett does it with his Berkshire Hathaway holdings. They're not cashing out, they're leveraging. For the everyday investor, this could mean borrowing against your home's equity to fund a business, or taking out a securities-backed loan against your investment portfolio. You keep the asset, you enjoy the appreciation, and you use borrowed money as liquidity to fund new opportunities. It's a move the wealthy have mastered, and one that can keep you rich for decades. One of the biggest mistakes people make is putting all their eggs in one basket. Maybe they sink everything into a house, or they risk it all in one business. The wealthy, however, understand the power of diversification, and debt is often the tool that allows them to achieve it. Imagine you own a thriving rental property. Instead of waiting years to save up cash for the next one, you borrow against the equity in the first. Now you own 2, then 3, then 5. Or picture a business owner who reinvests every dollar back into one company. That's risky, but if they use smart debt, they can branch out, buying a small stake in real estate, investing in stocks, maybe even launching a side business. Debt allows you to spread your risk, to plant seeds in multiple fields. And when the storms come, and they always do, some of those crops will still thrive. Diversification through debt isn't about greed. It's about resilience. It's about making sure one bad season doesn't wipe you out. This next strategy is one of the most powerful, and one of the least understood by the average person. Using debt to build generational wealth. The truth is, wealth often disappears by the third generation, but families who master debt can pass down empires instead of empty bank accounts. Here's how it works. Wealthy families use debt to acquire appreciating, income-producing assets. Over time, those assets generate cash flow and increase in value. The debt gets paid down, sometimes by the tenants, sometimes by the businesses themselves. By the time the next generation steps in, they're not inheriting liabilities. They're inheriting empires. Some even take it further. Instead of passing down just assets, they also pass down knowledge of leverage. They teach their children that borrowing smartly against real estate or business holdings is how you expand, how you preserve wealth, how you keep the family legacy alive. Generational wealth isn't just about what you leave behind. It's about leaving behind the blueprint to multiply it. And debt, smart debt, is often the cornerstone of that blueprint. Here's a secret that might shock you. The wealthiest people in the world often prefer control over ownership. Why? Because ownership comes with risks, taxes, and exposure. Control, however, comes with power. Debt is one of the tools that makes this possible. Think about how companies are bought out using loans. The person acquiring doesn't need to own the cash. They simply control the debt, acquire the asset, and now control the company. Or think about real estate developers. They don't always own the land outright. They control it through loans, partnerships, or financing structures. Yet, they get to dictate how it's developed, leased, or sold. The lesson: ownership is expensive, control is cheaper, and often far more powerful. The wealthy use debt not just to own, but to control. And in the game of wealth, control is often the ultimate prize. One of the smartest ways the wealthy use debt is through arbitrage. Arbitrage is simply taking advantage of the difference between two markets. You borrow at a low interest rate, then invest where the returns are higher. For example, borrowing money at 3% interest and investing in bonds that pay 7%. Or taking a low-interest business loan to invest in equipment that doubles production output. The wealthy are constantly scanning for these spreads. To them, debt is not a burden, it's a magnifying glass. It increases the impact of every good decision. The average person borrows to survive. The wealthy borrow to exploit opportunities. And in the world of money, opportunities favor the bold and the prepared. Inflation silently robs millions every year. Prices rise, currencies weaken, and what you thought was enough money suddenly doesn't stretch as far. But here's the hidden advantage: debt can actually protect you from inflation. When you borrow money today and pay it back in the future, you're repaying with dollars that are worth less than when you borrowed them. If your asset, like real estate, appreciates with inflation, you've essentially beaten the system. This is why the wealthy love long-term fixed-rate loans. Imagine borrowing $1 million at 4% interest today. 20 years from now, after inflation, that $1 million is worth far less in real terms, but your loan payment hasn't changed. Meanwhile, the asset you purchased has likely doubled or tripled in value. The poor fear debt in inflationary times. The rich smile, because they know debt, used wisely, makes inflation their ally. Philanthropy may not sound like a wealth-building strategy, but here's a secret: the wealthy often use debt to amplify the giving and protect their legacy. Some wealthy families set up charitable foundations funded by loans or bonds. The debt creates tax advantages, while the foundation allows them to support causes they care about without liquidating core assets. In some cases, they use charitable trusts funded by debt to pass wealth to heirs while avoiding estate taxes. This isn't just generosity, it's strategy. It's the fusion of giving and preserving. And when done well, it ensures both the community and the family benefit for generations. Debt isn't just about making money. For the wealthy, it's also about creating impact. Liquidity, access to cash, is one of the greatest strengths the wealthy maintain. But selling assets for cash often triggers taxes, weakens positions, or reduces long-term growth. So how do the rich stay liquid without selling? They use debt. They borrow against their stocks, homes, art collections, even their businesses. This gives them access to cash for new opportunities while leaving their core wealth intact and growing. Imagine having $10 million in stock. Instead of selling, you borrow $3 million against it. Now you can fund projects, invest in real estate, or simply enjoy luxury, all while your $10 million continues to grow in the market. Liquidity through debt is like having your cake and eating it too. You keep your wealth working while still enjoying flexibility. And now, we arrive at the final, and perhaps most powerful, way the wealthy use debt, as leverage for influence and power. Debt isn't just about money. It's about negotiation, positioning, and control. When wealthy individuals or corporations take on debt, they often gain access to powerful networks, banks, governments, investors. Those relationships open doors that pure cash never could. Even nations use debt this way, issuing bonds to fund infrastructure, then leveraging those relationships for geopolitical power. At the highest levels, debt is not weakness. It's influence. It's the ability to shape industries, policies, even global markets. This is why some of the most powerful people in the world are also some of the most indebted. Because debt, in their hands, is not a shackle, it's a sword. So now we've seen it, 20 smart ways debt can grow wealth. From buying real estate to building businesses. From protecting assets to passing down generational wealth. From shielding against inflation to creating power on a global scale. The difference between the poor and the wealthy is not the presence of debt. Both have it. The difference is in how they use it. The poor borrow to consume. The wealthy borrow to create. The poor see debt as a prison. The wealthy see it as a passport. Debt can destroy your life, or it can transform it. The key lies in your mindset, your discipline, and your ability to see opportunities where others see danger. So the next time you hear the word debt, don't flinch. Don't fear. Ask yourself instead, how can I make this debt work for me? How can I use it as a lever to lift myself, my family, and maybe even the world? Because debt itself isn't the enemy. Ignorance is. And now that you know these 20 smart strategies, you have the power to step out of fear and into wealth. If this documentary opened your eyes, if it gave you new perspective, then hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. Because wealth isn't just about money. It's about wisdom. And wisdom grows when it's shared.